The S&P 500 is moving toward its all-time high. Many traders are asking the question, is it forming a top? In this S&P 500 analysis, we're going to use technical analysis to analyze the S&P 500, review the market internals and the sentiment to see whether or not the S&P 500 is forming a top. Looking at this index chart here, you can see that the Nasdaq 100 and the Nasdaq Composite, they both made a new all-time high on Thursday. And the New York Stock Exchange Composite is still kind of hovering near the just above this consolidation area. But the transportation is making its way up, and it took out the June pivot high. And also the Dow Jones Industrial is also making its way up. And the S&P 500 is getting close to its all-time closing high, while the Russell 2000 is also making its way up, and it is getting up above this June pivot high here. So all in all the index is making its way up, except the New York Stock Exchange. It is still a little bit lagging compared to all the other indexes, but keep an eye on the Dow Jones Transportation. Looking at this weekly S&P 500 chart here, you can see that the S&P 500 is making its way toward this all-time high and getting closer to the upper bound of this megaphone channel. And if we zoom in on this weekly chart and take a look at the range for the week, it has a range of somewhere around just under 61 point. And for the week, it gained a little bit over 77 point, or 2.39%. And it is only just a little bit 44 points away from the all-time high of 1.3%. And if you bought the low, the March low, you have made 1,157 point, or a little bit over 52%. Looking at the sentiment chart here, you can see that the VIX is still within this neutral zone here between 20 and 30. So definitely the market is not getting, fearless here. It is still being a little bit cautious. And also the put-call ratio is not at a euphoria type of a level, because it is finished off at 0.62. Although earlier the week, it was down at the 0.5, 0.4 area. It is not at the low level that we used to see near the market top. And looking at the up-down volume ratio, the daily up-down volume ratio is still relatively subdued, but although it is positive, we did see a negative divergence on Thursday with slightly negative up-down volume ratio while the market was up, and also slightly a little bit more decliner than the advancers, like 17 more decliner than advancer on Thursday. Other than that, all the other days throughout the week is still pretty positive. In the New York Stock Exchange, new high, new low, it is still hovering around that 100 level. On Friday, finished with 92 more new high than new low. And the New York Stock Exchange AD line actually made a new high here, while the S&P 500 is still haven't closed at a new all-time high yet. It's still pretty much underneath this all-time closing high. So that is bullish in terms of the advanced decline. And looking at the Nasdaq new high, new low, the Nasdaq new high, new low is still also hovering in the mid 100 area, while the index, the Nasdaq 100, is putting in a new all-time closing high and also a new all-time high. Although on Friday it pulled back a bit, but still the new high, new low, there were 140 more new high than new low. And the Nasdaq advanced decline, the AD line, also moved up. And although it did not make a new high on the AD line, but the index actually pulled back on Friday, but the AD line actually moved up. So that is also a positive, and that provided a little bit of a positive divergence. So all in all, the sentiment and also the market internal seems to indicate that the market is showing some strength. Now let's take a look at the S&P 500 daily chart here. You can see that the price action, remember last week we were talking about coming up and fill the remainder of this gap here and get up above the 3228.45 and make its way up toward the all-time high at 3393.52. So you can see that it actually came up and filled the gap and now closed above the gap here. So we're going to keep an eye on it for next week to see will it get up and test this all-time high and possibly put in a new all-time high. Now, if it pulls back, then we're basically looking for this trend line as the first level of support. And if it break that trend line, then we're essentially looking for this 3259.81. That is this gap pivot here. Looking at this daily chart of the NASDAQ 100, we'll see that the price booked this trend line, gapped up, and put in a new all-time high and closed with a new all-time closing high on Thursday. Friday is going to pull back. If it pull back, then we are essentially looking for this gap to possibly get filled. But if it continue to move up, we essentially looking for this top of the channel, and it could possibly make it up to that 11,500 level. And here looking at the Dow Jones Industrial, you see the Dow Jones Industrial still underneath this June pivot highs, but it is getting back above the this trend line. Remember last week we were talking about this two doji hammer here that we need to see the price get back above this trend line and possibly move above the 27,102. And right now it closed above that, and it is inching away. It is inching up toward this pivot. This June pivot high here. And if Dow Jones Transportation is any indication, you could see that the Dow Jones Transportation actually took out the June pivot high and getting up into this level here at the 10,698, entering this gap here. And if it could come in and fill this gap, then that will be really bullish for the transportation as well as for the industrial, because what this means is the Dow Jones Transportation is signaling that the industrial will basically follow suit and get above the June pivot high and move up to a higher level. Looking at the Russell 2000, the Russell 2000 got above this 1,539.70, and it is moving toward this 1,610.60 level here, which is this pivot low. Looking at the S&P 500 ETF, the SPY, you can see that the SPY came up and got above the 332.58, which is this gap pivot low here. So it completely filled the gap and came up and closed above it. So right now it's basically been hitting this high volume no. And the next high volume no is essentially the close, the all-time high close level around 338.31. So that would be the next high volume no level that we probably keep an eye on before it come up and tag this all-time high, which is 339.08. Now on the downside, we're essentially looking for this here to provide some support. Essentially this level here, this pivot high here on this gap entry, and that would be the support, and also be essentially this trend line on the this channel lower trend line. So all in all, the market is still showing some strength, and it is getting close to the all-time high. And the likelihood is it will come up and test this all-time high. So in summary, looking at the sentiment and also the market internal, it all saying that the market has more strength to move up, and definitely it is not forming a top yet. It could be after we make a new all-time high. So we just have to wait and see to see how the market internal behave when an all-time high is being put in. So right now, looking at the price action and also the internal and the sentiment, it doesn't appear that the market is in that euphoric state where we'll get this blowout that everybody is doing a FOMO thing and chasing after the market. And that is when we usually see a top. And right now, we are not at that stage yet. Although we're not saying that it's not getting close, it could be. So we just have to keep an eye out when the market, when the S&P 500 put in a new all-time high, and see how the market internal and also the sentiment react at that particular point in time. Then we could get a better assessment whether a top is being formed or it's just a continuation of this big upward move. So if you find this video to be informative and useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching and stay safe.